In this series, I speak with 8 incredible thinkers in Africa, people working to solve complex challenges across the board. We discuss the civic space in Africa, the physical and online spaces where people come together to exercise their rights in shaping our societies. The civic space is important because it provides everyone with an opportunity to contribute to a thriving, inclusive society. Join us for these diverse topics, from ensuring technology positively serves society to ensuring that communities come together to increase women and youth's participation in decision making. Judy, storytelling in pop culture shapes narratives within and about Africa. How can storytelling be leveraged to shape and inform inclusive democracies and to enhance civic engagement?
The reason I'm taking a long pause is because not just because it's a complex question, but because the word democracy, there's something about it which I feel as storytellers and people who believe in democracy just hasn't been unpacked.
Yeah.
When you talk about storytelling and democracy, you get the same sensation a child gets when they're told to finish their spinach.
Yeah.
There's something about it that is wholesome, good for us, needed in the body.
Yeah, but not tasty.
And that it's because there's something about that word that is not being told with authenticity. I feel we need to stop using the word like democracy so like everybody gets it. But this is what I mean, because what is it that people who believe in fairness and justness and equal chances for everybody, what is it that we're not expressing in an authentic fashion so that people are not just holding this word democracy and are feeling freed and opened to realizing that democracy, it's in my house, it's on my street, it's in my neighborhood, it's in that vote. It is alive and it could be thriving and doing well. So I feel as storytellers, that is the challenge that has been landed on us. And it's a challenge that we must accept. But to do it, we have to look at the things that democracy is meaning around the world right now. We can't have this particular conversation without really reflecting whether or not it makes it, onto the end of the podcast. I just have to get it out. America, democracy. But the more you look at it, you're like, it's the most undemocratic nation on earth.
So I'm going to bring you to Africa.
But I have
context.
I have to get that out of my head.
Okay.
I have to get it because we took that word.
Agreed.
And so you can't separate it. We can't sit here and have a conversation about democracy in Africa without asking who gave us that word.
Yeah. Does it make sense for Africans?
And what makes sense for Africans is the thing that makes sense for Africans. What Rwanda did, taking, after the genocide, taking things all the way down to village level and having these, the courts made up of people living in these villages who had done things to each other. That feels more democratic to me than when we just use the word democracy, because that sends us spinning and running straight in a different direction. Often we find even the briefs that come to storytellers. It's things like with all the gender inequality in Africa, we need to get Africans must be more democratic and gender blah 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 blah. All these words, and then you look at it, you think this is a continent made up of matriarchs. Think about it. Who calls the shots in our villages? Think of the respect with which grandmothers traditionally, what were held. So there's something very strange about the way the narrative or the challenge or the brief arrives on our laps. And that's the thing that we need to really carefully unpack every time we are challenged or asked to make films about democracy.
Yeah. And if we challenge it, because I'm talking about it from the context of African lives and lived experiences, how can storytelling reflect my challenges, the things I'm facing at a very local and granular level? And is it important? How can we go about ensuring that we're telling stories that reflect what democracy means for African lives?
I think if I look at the body of work, because it's a body of work that we've supported at Docubox over the last decade. We just turned a decade old last month.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to us. That first batch of films did just that. And I think it's because we began with asking filmmakers and storytellers, do you have a story that matters deeply, deeply to you? We didn't throw out a call and say, give us your democrat. No. And then you find that actually we are very naturally civic-minded.
Yeah.
We really are. Like, as Africans, I don't know if there is any other continent on earth that cares as much about justice and fairness.
Yeah.
You know, if you watch right now, formerly called Testament, now called Our Land, Our Freedom, another film that we supported by two Kenyan women, Zipi Kimundu and Mina Nanji. That film follows Dedan Kimathi's wife all the way to the point of her passing. It took those filmmakers six years to make that film, Mina Nanji and Zipi Kimundu. An incredible film, because you watch it, and as Dedan's daughter or daughter visits all these different forgotten Mau Maus, and you revisit the archive, and you start to understand what colonialism does, and then you uncover unmarked graves in that film. It starts, with Wanjogu just in somewhere on the outskirts of Nairobi, digging and discovering a jaw and realizing that Kenya is filled with unmarked graves that the colonialists literally shot down and then turned around and told us that we're the ones who killed each other. And yet they have all these unmarked graves where they would just line us up and shoot us. And by the time Dedan's widow passes at the end of that film, and you see Wanjogu's land movement beginning to grow.
And for our listeners who are across the continent, maybe you could just give context of who Dedan Kimathi was.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that he was our Che Guevara in some ways.
Agreed.
I think Dedan Kimathi was a freedom fighter who, one of many, Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi, who was captured by the British, killed, and his body hidden in an unmarked grave. And so the film is very much the search for Dedan Kimathi's body, in a sense. But so we go on a very long journey with his widow, whose health is failing, whose mind is sharp, but whose health is failing, who's approaching 100 years old and searching for her husband's body. And so you get to the end of a film like that, and there's always a stunned silence, because you now have taken that word colonialism, all those things, and you've unpacked what they mean, and you feel a new commitment to changing something. And I think those are the things that's what films have the power to do, especially nonfiction films when done the right way. But they're costly, and they're costly not just in terms of the amount of money that they cost, but can you imagine dedicating a decade of your life to following one story? And these are highly creative filmmakers.
Yeah. What will it take for us to get a seat at the table, to have our voices? Because you've spoken about Scarred, the man who knew too much.
Yeah. For me, I feel that there was an opportunity that happened in the thousands, and that was Utna. I don't know if you ever heard of Utna, but
Yes, I remember it when I was a child.
Yeah.
I think it was on KBC, the national broadcaster, KBC. Yes.
What it was absolute genius.
Yeah.
And I won't go too deep in it, but African broadcasters from west to north to middle to east to all decided that their content could show on a single platform because you therefore had this these public broadcasters creating things, being able to have a single platform. Can you imagine what kind of muscle and might that idea held? That could have been the solution that we needed.
Yeah.
Because even when you look at the way documentary films are made, it's quite bizarre. Because you hope to get your first funding from a home fund. In this case, we're so fortunate to exist as Docubox and to be able to put in often first funding into films, because this then allows the filmmaker to make their trailer and now begin their enormous journey to raise money for their film.
Yes.
And I think we also are a bit of an endorsement to many funds when they see that Docubox is financed an African or East African film. It says something. It allows, it says that it's worth investing in this film. These films of ours then go to the West, to IDFA, biggest market in Europe, to the world, to Berlin, to the World Cinema Fund, to Hot Docs in Canada. And all those Western broadcasters at these markets, they sit at a single table. Often you'll have pitches happening to a group of completely diverse broadcasters from different countries. Those countries have co-production treaties in place. So if I am Swedish and I have my $50,000 from a Swedish film fund, I know I can then get Danish money, Icelandic money, this money, that money. And then I also know that we have an agreement. And that is how documentary films are often made out there. It's everybody puts their little bit, and finally you have these films being made. So Utna could have done that, and I haven't lost faith in the public broadcaster coming together.
You've been listening to Talk to Me Direct. Follow and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.